Our why is Twiva is to support businesses and particularly micro, small and medium enterprises, to support them to be sustainable businesses, and then of course support them to scale. If they do scale, then we can solve the biggest problem we have on the continent, which is unemployment for our young people.
Twiva is 5 years. I joined the train, captained by Peter, 2 years, I think 2 years ago. And it was a coffee conversation. So we both are second-time founders. And as I was doing my previous business, so I met Peter in the streets of Nairobi. You have a nice cup of coffee and you're talking about business. And I think when your values are aligned, they say, if you know, you know. So we have a chat and say, hey, why don't we do this together? I said, bet. And so, yeah, when you think about how you work, and especially in business, your co-founder is literally your life partner, if you'd call it that, in business, because every decision you're making, it's not just you as a person, you're making on behalf of the people you're working with, on behalf of stakeholders, on behalf of the community as well.
What is that one fear that you had at the beginning when you were starting Twiva, and now you realize it's no longer a fear, or you've been able to overcome?
As we do this, we have clarity of what we are doing. So initially I didn't know what startups are, that they're experiments. So then there was the fear to fail, right? But as we continue to do this, the clarity is that it's an experiment. So failing is part of the process. The idea is if it's not working, you move on to the next thing. And the next thing, I mean, those little tiny iterations, folks would call that pivot. So it's to embrace failure so that then you can fail forward. Of course, preferably you fail fast and cheap.
We really have deep respect for founders because it's a very lonely journey. Then second, I think you start buy-in, where remember, even your employees are your stakeholders. They need to buy into the vision. You can't do everything by yourselves. When you look at investors, when you look at partners, when you look at other institutions as well, when they buy into your idea, they continue to validate it and propel you to do that which you're set up for.
What are some of those initial hurdles that you had at the beginning when you're setting up Twiva?
You have limited resources to finance your experiment and you're failing, which means you're losing money. And also the product is crappy, right? At least the first version of it. So a lot of bugs, it's not working, a lot of complaint from customers. They're trying to buy that patience so that you can iterate. And then of course, attracting talent, because remember, you are an early stage startup. Even the value proposition is not that powerful. So how do you convince other people to join you and that this is worth investing their talent, their time to make it work?
I feel for startups is identifying the right capital for you and investment.
Absolutely.
How have you been able to educate that? Because investors are so many in the market.
Yes, that's true. And by the way, I think the beauty about co-founding is also looking at your strengths. So Peter does drive a lot of the investment conversations and he'll chime in as well. You'd find that one, you said it well, not all capital is good capital. So number two is know what you want the capital for. Half the time I find entrepreneurs are raising, but you kind of have not mapped out what you want to do with that money once it comes. And those are the questions you'll get. And then your preparedness. You go through a lot of due diligence. So even before we start talking about capital, do you have your books in order so that the people who need to give you that money will be like, okay, super, everything is well done or well laid out. So yeah, and Peter can tell us, raising money is not easy. It's not a one-day conversation. You can start the conversation in January, probably get it in December. Also remember, VCs are also human beings, so there is human bias. Perhaps have they bought into the idea? Do they understand your business? You'll meet VCs whom you've pitched so many times what your business does, and still they don't get it, right? So it's just the nuances that you need to maneuver. But yeah.
So some of the things that we have learned now having fundraised that we wish we knew when we started is that it takes forever. So you need, and again, it takes forever in terms of the duration. And then you shouldn't be raising money when you need money. Okay. So you should be sort of raising when you don't need it, which is quite interesting. Because again, the investor will ask you why you're raising money and you're saying you don't need money. So there's intricacies there. And then we wish we knew the type of capital to gravitate towards. And so, for example, it's convenient to think that you want to go for debt when you're starting because you don't want to be diluted, because you want to iterate and have a lot of autonomy. But then that's not patient capital. These are the guys who liquidate it very quickly if they want to recover. So again, gravitating towards people who understand what you're trying to do, patient capital, impact investors or folks who are aligned with a founders-friendly way of investing. There is an experiment and there's a chance that it'll fail. But these are not mistakes that we made, at least not entirely, because we got lucky and had conversations and of course investment from investors that we aligned in terms of value, how long this is going to take for us to iterate and make it, or rather have the product market fit. Yeah.
In the recent years, Twiva has onboarded different kind of partners, and Kua Ventures is one of those partners that you joined last year. How has that journey been with Kua Ventures and even their ecosystem of creators or even workshops that you've been part of?
I think for us, and that's a big up to Kua Ventures. And no, this is not a paid ad, but the support to businesses continues to be phenomenal, because we're having a conversation, we're saying for investors, more than just the money, the business needs a lot of support, including just checking up on them and looking into processes and policies, opening doors to other partnerships, for example. So if you look at Peter Fry and Madalena, they have been our biggest champions, including sending us birthday cakes when it's our birthday. So when you think about an investor who really is saying, I want to do life with you, throughout and every day, I want to be there to talk business. What challenges are you having? How can we solve that? And we've had quite a number of incidences where they've come through for us, both in good and tough times. And when you think about it that way, then for Kua, I would say their portfolio companies are very lucky to have a very intentional partner to do business with them. So if you're looking to be able to get funding, I'd say Kua is definitely a home you need to join. But I mean, Peter can talk more about them, the journey that has been since we got invested from them.
Yeah, so the other thing is this concept of coaching and mentorship. And the biggest value that I have found for us is when they bring us together with our peers, other founders. It's very easy to learn from their mistakes, borrow insights, and of course create value for them. And again, it was for most of us as founders, we think that the challenges we are facing are unique to us. When you realize that you have a pool of, say, 10 founders who are facing the same problem, it's very easy to exchange ideas of how everybody is looking at the same problem, so that you're not having to invest a lot of resources and time to fix some of the challenges that someone else within the same ecosystem has had to navigate and has solved. So bringing us together with our peers and of course introducing mentors into that ecosystem matters. Their portfolio has been of great value to us.
What kind of sacrifices have you made or the business has forced you to make?
When you talk about sacrifices, by the way, I think as a founder, the two words would be servant leadership. You don't have a day off, right? You work Monday to Monday. My CEO is Weaven, and I pay him. He continues to exert himself. And when you lead from the front and lead from the back, that means that every day, whenever there's a challenge, there's no day you call Peter and say, hey, we have this problem it's a Saturday, let's talk money. Oh, you come to the office. And so when you talk about social life, yes, it's very squeezed. And so you find anytime you meet other entrepreneurs, it's like therapy. We call it pre-therapy, right? Because you're talking about how to build your business. And I often say there's no work-life balance. Work affects life and life affects work. When you think about it that way, you're saying, I'm not going to plan too long. 6 months from now, I'll show up every day the best that I can.
If you look at a version of yourself that doubted you'd make it today, what will you tell them?
For me, those versions keep coming to me quite often, right? So I have a season where
Tell that.
tomorrow will be better. Remember, it's an experiment, at least before you transition from a startup to a scale-up. I believe work is equals worship, matters what we do here. But over and above that, you need a lot of faith. to move from an idea to a startup and preferably a scaler. There's someone within the Kenyan ecosystem, a Joram, who says, if you want to know God, start a business in Kenya. And by that, I believe he's saying that you are going to have to lean into him. He's not going to face any problem and any challenge that can be named or labeled. And I have seen Twiva go through so many of downturns, and we have had so many reasons to lose faith, to quit, but we believed that maybe we should wait a little longer. And then that has given us the time to actually believe that this can work.
When you think about Peter and Jesus, and Jesus is telling Peter to walk on water, and Peter has this doubt. He's saying, are you sure, bro? I can do it? And that is an entrepreneur, that you must have faith. And again, walking that journey with God, saying that you're inviting him to be present. So I'll tell you one thing that I do whenever I come to work in the morning. I pray for my day, but I pray and I mention each employee by name, right? So you can't say that God is in part conversations and not in others. It's a daily walk with him to say, hey, I'm making a decision. As we said, I'm making a decision that is not just going to affect me. It'll affect the people I work with. It'll affect the stakeholders. Can you guide me? Can you give me your wisdom like Solomon? And so with that, I think we've seen Twiva really being anchored, and especially even as founders, where we encourage one another with devotion. It's those days, it's not making sense. And we're saying, you know what, if God has said it will happen, it will happen. And the same way as we were saying, you're raising capital, it's taken too long, or you find the team members that you've been trying to build have maybe left. Like, there's so many things that will make you question yourself and whether this is worth it. And then God reminds you, hey, did I not bring you to this day today? And that is sufficient. So yeah, it's phenomenal.
For someone who is starting or want to go into entrepreneurship, mine is to encourage you to go into it. Most people would wait until they are ready. I would wish you start and do it when you are afraid. But also understand that startups are experiments, which means that you want to have a conviction that there's a problem worth solving and that you have the right solution. But don't hold on to it so dearly that you're not willing to be flexible to change. If it's an experiment, there's a high chance that it's going to fail. And your job is to find that is scalable and repeatable. So you have to validate that what you have makes sense from a commercial point of view, but also preferably on the impact side. So, and then as you experiment, your game is, or your responsibility is, how do I work with the resources that I have? So don't think about fancy things like having an office. You can start from your house and the tools that you need. So again, you fail, but preferably you fail fast, fail forward, and fail cheap. And cheap is make sure that if it's not working, you hedge your bets and make sure that you're not wasting a lot of resources.
So you have an idea, invest in that idea. There are a few things that I have learned in my journey that I would say. Number one, your idea doesn't have to be perfect. So pitch it to as many people as you can, because they will give you feedback. That's step one. Step two is, who are you surrounding yourself with? And these are the people who would be able to propel you to try and build this idea. Number three, I think when you think about it from being an employee, because I have been one to being an employer, is that you need to be able to self-sacrifice and show up well. If you're working for someone, then give it the best that you have, because guess what? One day you'll open your business and others will work for you. So ideally you get that which you give. I'd also say, when it comes to trying to set up structures, you don't have to know everything. Right now we're in an era where if you go to Dr. Google, you will learn a lot, right? So even in businesses, you won't have 10 years of experience to be able to say, now I have a good idea. No. I'd say use the resources that you have to learn how to get into the sector you want to get to. Surround yourself with the right people. And you'd find that even for guys who give, like investors and VCs, half the time they're not just investing in your idea, they're investing in you, the person. So equally continue to grow yourself. I think you will get to see a lot of scale as an entrepreneur. And as Peter said it so well, you're likely to fail, right? So try it anyway. And even with that, believe in yourself and really just go for that which you know you can do, and let God guide you in the rest of your journey, because He has the ultimate blueprint. And if He said it will happen, guess what? It will happen.